I thank the distinguished representative of Namibia. Please, Mr. Otunnu.
Thank you, Excellency. In terms of reorganizing and restructuring international financial institutions, I do not believe that the Secretary General would have a key role there, but the Secretary General, nevertheless, must always be ready to suggest, draw attention to some of the historical imbalances, draw attention to vulnerabilities, so that those who are at the table and make the decision would take these into account. In terms of what the Pact for the Future says about Africa's outlook on reform of the Security Council, perhaps, Africa outlook is partly determined by what is viewed by Africa as a historical imbalance. But as I said earlier, reforming the Security Council is not the primary role, doesn't belong to the Secretary General, even though the Secretary General should encourage, should draw attention to factors to be taken into account, and should try to encourage some kind of a consensus to emerge. The main discussion in the processes which are already in place, the intergovernmental process in place, is really between the member states, especially the permanent 5, and the rest of the membership. The Pact for the Future was a very important landmark document. We should work with it, and I hope that come 2028, we would have much to show in terms of what has been achieved as a result of the Pact for the Future. But I support very much the provisions of the Pact. I support very much the measures that needs to be taken. I hope that 2028 would show good results.
I thank Mr. Otunnu. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Cuba.
Muchas gracias, señora.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Mr. Olara Otunnu, Cuba thanks you for this opportunity to engage in these interactive dialogues, and we reiterate the need for the selection process for the Secretary General to be open, transparent, and inclusive. We align ourselves with the questions asked by the G77, the NAM and AOSIS, and we'd like to ask the following questions in our national capacity. What concrete structural reforms will you engage in to transform the international financial system into one that is more just, inclusive and representative, that would effectively respond to the needs and priorities of developing countries, including access to finance, debt relief, and louder voice and agency in decision-making? And how do you see the role of the UN in this process? Our second question, given the growing rise of conflicts and the proliferation of warmongering rhetoric, what actions will the Secretary General engage in to promote a culture of peace, the peaceful settlement of disputes, and respect for the principle of the non-use of force? Thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of Cuba. Please, Mr. Otunnu.
Excellency, first, the Secretary General should always invoke the Charter. Should always rest on the principles of the Charter, regardless of the situation, in a way which is impartial, in a way which is equal, and a way which is responsible. Secondly, Excellency, about the structures of the IFIs, the International Financial Institution, two roles for the Secretary General. They are not central. I don't want to mislead you. They are not central. But they are nevertheless important roles to be played by the Secretary General. One is advocacy, using the moral platform of the Secretary General, using the soft power of the Secretary General to sensitize, to highlight, to underscore the important factors that should be taken into account by the decision makers. And secondly, in the case of particular countries in need, as I said earlier, when they have done their own homework and their own planning and their own mobilization of resources domestically and fighting corruption, is for the Secretary General to knock on certain doors on their behalf. These are the two roles for the Secretary General. And then those who must decide on restructuring the international financial institution take this into account.
I thank Mr. Otunnu. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Peru, followed by the Russian Federation and the next civil society organization.
Gracias, presidente.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Mr. Otunnu, for your presentation. Peru is participating in this dialogue with the firm commitment to strengthen the United Nations in order for it to be able to address in a cooperative manner the challenges that humanity faces. Inspired by the legacy of Pérez de Cuellar, the only UN Secretary-General from the Latin American and the Caribbean region, we reaffirm the importance of leadership that is able to bring about consensus in the current international context that is marked by growing complexity, volatility, and uncertainty. In fact, my delegation wishes to recognize that Mr. Otunnu was a key stakeholder in the election of Ambassador de Cuellar, representing his country at the Security Council during the crucial moments for that selection process. We'd like to ask the following question. Next year, 2027, will see the beginning of the debate on the future of the Sustainable Development Goals, moving towards 2030. So what do you think about what should happen after 2030? What concrete actions will you be engaging in to bring back the effective capacity of the Secretary-General to lead, to contribute, to respond to emerging threats to international peace and security, such as transnational organised crime and AI governance? Those are our questions. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Peru. Please, Mr. Otunnu.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Yes, indeed, I have very fond memories and great respect for Secretary-General Pérez de Cuellar. On the SDGs, there are two things that we need to do. First, the Secretary-General need to find ways and knock on doors to generate more resources for countries which are struggling to fulfill the SDGs. But again, I repeat, countries that have done their own work at home, they're responsible, they're fighting corruption, they're planning, they're investing, they're mobilizing resources. Then the Secretary-General can come and give a helping hand. And secondly, it's also, I think, important that in terms of advocacy, the Secretary-General should continue to be a key advocate. And thirdly, I would say this, I think I said it earlier, that for me it's very important the UN shouldn't be a diplomatic ivory tower. The SDGs are important. I believe in them. But we should now follow the trail of the SDGs as they go to national and to community levels to make sure that we are connected, that we have the same understanding, and that these things will in fact produce the results we want. I don't have time to give you examples of how some of the Millennium Development Goals that I was very much involved in went wrong in terms of implementation at the national and local levels. We should guard against that.
I thank Mr. Otunnu. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation.
Distinguished President, Russia believes it's important to select the most worthy candidate that will be in line with the high standards of professionalism and competency and dedication to the goals and principles of the UN Charter in all of their entirety and interconnection. So we'd like to, therefore, ask a few questions to Mr. Otunnu. First of all, Mr. Otunnu, the Secretary General, is to be guided by the General Assembly. Would you think that it ought to be guided by resolutions that go beyond the UN's authority, especially those that are currently considered by the Security Council? Do you believe that the principles of the Charter can be ranked by importance, in which the Secretariat would be able to arbitrarily interpret situations using certain principles, for example, for territorial integrity and self-determination? Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation. Please, Mr. Otunnu.
Excellency, as I said earlier, the role of the Security Council, the role of the General Assembly, complementary as set out in the Charter. One shouldn't try to displace the other. And also, as much as possible, we should avoid conflict between the two institutions. That being said, we do have in the record of the UN, the Uniting for Peace going back to 1950, as I said earlier, used very rarely and very sparingly. And as Secretary General, I'll do everything to make sure that we bring back cooperation, cordiality between these two important organs of the United Nations, the Security Council and the General Assembly, and even among the Security Council members.
I thank Mr. Otunnu. I now give the floor to the next civil society organization, the African Development Interchange Network. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. For 80 years, the United Nations has never been led rights of women and girls.
Sorry, can we stop the time and you repeat because we could not hear you? I think the microphone was not working. If you could just start again and we put the timer again as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. For 80 years, the United Nations has never been led by a woman.
Sorry again, but I think you're pressing the microphone. Once it's on, don't press the button. So we go again.
For 80 years, the United Nations has never been led by a woman, even as gender equality and the human rights of women and girls remain central to its commitments. At a time when those rights are increasingly being challenged, how would you, Mr. Otunnu, use the authority and leadership of the Secretary General to defend hard-won gains, confront gender-based violence and discrimination, and ensure that equality is reflected within the United Nations itself? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your understanding, and everybody could understand the question. Please, Mr. Otunnu.
Thank you very much, Madam. I believe strongly in equality. I believe strongly in gender parity and would promote that at every opportunity as Secretary General. Secondly, Madam, I spent several years, it was pioneering work at the time, incorporating the protection, the well-being of children and women and innocent people as an integral and substantive aspect of the peace and security agenda of the Security Council. I'm very happy that that has now been broadened to incorporate other aspects of peace and security, and I support that very, very strongly. So what you are suggesting is a natural extension of what I've been doing for many, many years. I also said earlier that one of the reasons why we can't be indifferent to the major conflicts going on is when we see the impact of that conflict on the ground, what it does to children, women, and innocent people.
I thank Mr. Otunnu. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Ecuador, followed by Indonesia, the Philippines, and the next civil society organization. These are so far the remaining speakers on the list. If anybody else would like to request the floor, please press the button now. Otherwise, we would close this. Please, the distinguished representative of Ecuador.
Gracias, señora Presidenta.
Thank you, Madam President. I thank Mr. Otunnu for participating in these dialogues. In different parts of the planet, transnational organised crime is undermining state institutions, feeding violence, exacerbating conflicts, and compromising the protection of human rights. Your vision statement underscores the importance of prevention, early action, strengthening cooperation with regional organisations and the leadership of the Secretary-General to build consensus. In this context, do you think that the United Nations should give more priority to transnational organised crime within its peace and security agenda? And what concrete initiatives would you engage in as Secretary-General to promote a more comprehensive and coordinated response from the UN system and from regional organisations in response to this challenge? Thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of Ecuador. Please, Mr. Otunnu.
This is a new evolving phenomenon with major implications. And there are parts of the world which are already being seriously affected by transnational organized crimes. The UN should look very carefully at this and see what contribution it can make beyond what is now being done by the agencies which are in place. So I will do more homework in that area. I can't say now for you that this and that is what we'll do, but it's a very important issue. It should be looked at very seriously and something proposed that can make a contribution to pushing back the growth of transnational organized crimes.
I thank Mr. Otunnu. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Indonesia.
We appreciate the President of the General Assembly for convening this meeting. Excellency, we thank you for sharing your vision for the future of the United Nations. At a time when multilateralism is facing increasing fragmentation, the role of the Secretary General is more critical than ever to serve as a moral leader and a bridge builder. In this regard, Indonesia would like to pose the following questions. With multilateralism under increasing strain, do you believe incremental reform is sufficient, or is there a need for more fundamental recalibration to the system? How will you overcome persistent resistance to change while ensuring the UN adapts to current and future realities? Second, in an era of complex fragmentation, how do you intend to revitalize the UN role as the prominent forum for open dialogue among leaders to foster mutual understanding and solidarity? Lastly, how do you envision strengthening meaningful youth participation in shaping global norms and contributing to forward-looking and future-ready multilateral solution? We look forward to your insights. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Indonesia. Please, Mr. Otunnu.
Thank you very much, Excellency. I said earlier that even though member states are the immediate association that compose the UN is also about the people. And so the Secretary General should reach out to the people, should invite them to be involved, should connect the UN to them, should give them some sense of hope and faith in this institution. And when I'm speaking about the people, obviously, perhaps the most important single segment are the youth. After all, the Charter says succeeding generations. And so we should get them more engaged with the work and the enterprise of the United Nations. And then you spoke about resistance to reform. Well, there may be a tendency to have some pockets of resistance. I wouldn't be surprised if within the Secretariat, among member states, the role of the Secretary General is to work on that, to make sure that we go from resistance to acceptance and cooperation. Because long-term, these reforms are for the benefit of the United Nations and for the people of the world, long-term. The risks are real if we don't face up to serious, thoroughgoing reforms right now. Now, you spoke about incremental or fundamental. I think in my remarks it's clear. I said reform is not an optional choice. Right now, it is an imperative. And therefore, to me, we should go do fundamental changes. We should change the attitude of our attitude. We should change the culture of work, like any major institutions in the world will do all the time. It should be the same at the United Nations.
I thank Mr. Otunnu. I now give the floor as the next speaker to the distinguished representative of the Philippines, followed by the next civil society organization, which will also ask the last questions for today's interactive dialogue. So we will end a bit earlier. Please, distinguished representative of Indonesia, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Mr. Otunnu, we thank you for sharing your vision for the future of the United Nations. As chair of the like-minded group for middle-income countries, the Philippines would like to inquire how you believe the UN's support to middle-income countries can be improved, considering that the majority of the world's poor continue to live in middle-income countries, including a strategic plan for action for mix and a dedicated focal point in the Secretariat, which the like-minded group have been consistently calling for. In particular, how do you see the opportunities provided by UN80 to rethink and recalibrate and strengthen partnerships for and with the middle-income countries throughout the United Nations system? Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Philippines indeed. I now give the floor to Mr. Otunnu again to answer.
Excellency, you know, in working on this, we should not leave any group out. For example, quite rightly, we have been putting emphasis on the most vulnerable countries, least developed countries, island countries, for understandable reason. But we must not leave out of the picture middle-income countries that have done relatively well. We want them to do even better. So as Secretary General, I would remain engaged with their development. I would remain engaged with their concerns. I would be advocate for them as well.
I thank Mr. Otunnu. As a final question, I now give the floor to the last civil society organization and invite the Assembly to view a pre-recorded video by Ayufun Foundation Trust.
On behalf of Edufund Foundation Trust India, grassroots organizations working directly with vulnerable community are already addressing urgent challenges such as hunger, climate change, and social inequality, often with minimal resources. Despite their impact, they remain underrepresented in global decision-making and struggle to access institutional funding. If appointed as Secretary General, how will you ensure the grassroots civil society organizations are meaningfully included in shaping development policies and gain equitable access to funding and support within the United Nations system?
I thank the Foundation Trust, Ayufun. Please, Mr. Otunnu, to respond to the last question, also sum up the interactive dialogue.
Grassroots and civil society, that is where I've been buried the last 5 years in the project of Rocho Pacho in northern Uganda, which is working with women and youth and communities of faith and people of different political persuasion coming together in a movement to rebuild a broken society. So I have some experience of doing that. I would just say to you, distinguished excellencies and delegates, that what I bring are decades of experience across the UN pillars. It is decades in every situation of leadership working to build consensus, working to propose innovative solutions. And it is experience, as this last question suggests, of working at the grassroots. I feel at home here, but not only here. I'm at home at the national level in different parts of the world. I've worked with them, I've been to their countryside. And I'm at home at the grassroots. That's where I've been the last 5 years, not just in my country, but also elsewhere when I was involved with the UN. So I just hope that you will give consideration to this candidature and that what I bring may be helpful for the UN at this critical moment and the kind of leadership it needs. I thank you very much.
I thank Mr. Otunnu. We have come to the end of this interactive dialogue. I would like to thank the candidate, you, Mr. Otunnu. I would like to thank you, all delegations and distinguished representatives, for your participation and your contributions. As announced in my letter at the beginning of the week, we have another interactive dialogue tomorrow as we have another candidate. So we will be back tomorrow. I wish you all a good day. The meeting is adjourned.